Yeah, my name is Desmond, and I hail from Chicago, the Windy City, and I've been here in Amsterdam for the last couple months. My time here is coming to a close, but it's been a great couple months here.
I'm Laura. I'm from Los Angeles, but I go to school in San Francisco, and I have a month left in Europe, so it's pretty close, but not as close as these guys, so I'm enjoying it as much as I can.
My name is Anthony. I am from northern New Jersey, and I study in Washington, D.C. I as well am coming to the end of my lovely 4 months in Amsterdam, and I'm glad I'm able to do this panel. I'm really excited.
Hey everyone, this is Clownvis, a podcast about queer issues. I'm joined here today with 3 lovely people from the US. We met at the Gay Student Association in Amsterdam. After the recent elections, we were curious on how our international friends see their future in a Trump world, and we decided to host a roundtable interview. So let's start with the victory of Trump. Yeah, because did you see that coming? So I remember talking to a few of you, and I was like, how are you?
Yeah.
I'm still shook. I will forever be shook. This is where the tear comes. Cue the tears. No. Go ahead.
I was just kind of like hit with it, like shock, but I'm not surprised, I guess. Like I didn't think it was going to happen, or I wasn't letting myself think it was going to happen. And then when it happened, like I saw a lot of people posting like, this is not the country I know, or I can't believe this happened. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, we were founded on racism. We were founded on murdering Native Americans. We were founded on sexism. And like, I don't know, like slavery and racism have not gone away in America. They've just evolved, and it's kind of gone down this different channel, and it looks nicer on paper, but it's the same kind of mechanisms at work. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that people voted through racist ideals and xenophobia, and instead of blaming the billionaires and blaming the corporations and blaming the banks, which are the cause of like the economic problems we have, let's blame my Muslim neighbor, let's blame the Mexicans. So it's kind of, it makes sense to me, but I'm still like, just, I can't believe I have to go back to that. And like, that's like, I keep like forgetting it, and I'm like, oh, things are okay. And then I like see like Trump said some dumb thing, and I'm just like, I have, like, that's happening. Like it's not going away. And so it's just kind of, it's like every like week or so, it's like forget, kind of chill out, and then it comes back to you, and then you're kind of, I don't know how to feel about it. It's like when I first found out, I cried, and I felt like a member of my family had died, or like, but it was so like more surreal than that. Like it wasn't like that kind of pain, but it was that kind of like shock and like just so extreme, I guess. I don't know how to, it was one of the weirdest things I've ever like felt, like knowing that was like reality.
Yeah, because you were all here in the Netherlands when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with like totally your shock. Like I felt the exact same way, but I disagree a little with like the diagnosis of why I think he won. But it was just, I felt a similar way. Like I was just like, wow. Like I was scared for numerous things happening. Like for instance, I was like, who is he gonna appoint to the Supreme Court? Is he really gonna overturn marriage equality, overturn abortion decisions? Like, is he gonna literally knock on people's doors and ask people to show their papers and deport people? Like, is he actually going to, is that what America's gonna become? Is he gonna say something stupid on Twitter to incite some sort of terrorist activity in a major city? Like I live in Washington, my parents both work in New York. Like I was scared. Like now I have a more optimistic take. I know that's very negative, but now I've like tried to sort of like look forward, I guess. And I'm not scared anymore, I guess I would say. But I think why it's so surprising for people in our generation, all of us, is because like we don't live in Trump country. Like in our world, Hillary Clinton was the clear winner. Like all our universities, everywhere we're from, Hillary Clinton won big, and in fact, probably bigger than ever before. Like California, her margin was insane, like millions and millions of votes. Like, so like for me, I don't have any Trump supporting friends. Like I don't have anyone that I can like relate to understand why. But I think it's like a complex thing that I think I think that people in a certain part of the country were struggling, And Trump was like their answer to that. They're like, Hillary Clinton represented the same thing that was already happening, and to them, Trump was a chance to change things. And I think that for us, living in very liberal places with liberal views and with the media sort of always reinforcing our view and always telling us that Hillary's going to win, Trump is awful, we sort of no one really understood these like millions of people in the country. And I think racism played a huge role in his campaign. I think xenophobia played a huge role in his campaign. But I don't think that that's why like the 50 million people voted for him. I don't think that was the main motivation. I think in many ways he represented change for people. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like everything that's already been said, I was devastated, shook. Upset is an understatement. And just because of the time difference, it was something that I woke up to. It wasn't, something that I watched and cringed, and maybe that was better for it. I was allowed to, have one more night's rest.
We got really under drunk that night.
Under the illusion that, I had some hope. But, what was so interesting is that, when I got the opportunity, as I always do, I call my mother, call my grandmother, and, just to debrief. And also because the time changes, and because my mother knows when to turn off the TV and when to do whatever. So I call her, and, it's afternoon or just midday in Amsterdam, and it's, just morning in Chicago, and she had barely woken up. And she hadn't heard the news yet. And so I'm the one who has to break it to her. And, even though I know my mother well enough that I knew exactly what her reaction was. And, there were no tears, there was no screaming, and as I said before, she was like, well, this is just the fight that we have to continue to struggle. Don't underestimate the capacity of white citizens of the United States. Yeah. Don't underestimate the racism that exists. I do agree that I think, for whatever reason, Trump was able to tap into, the rural American, the disillusioned American. And they are experiencing problems that need to be addressed. But at the same time, what Trump represents, what he has said, what people who he surrounds himself with represents, has shown that we're in for a rough 4 years. And I do like what political commentator Van Jones has said, in that, and it's kind of comical, but I believe it's quite true, that what we're experiencing is white backlash, and that the white Americans cannot fathom the fact that they've lived 8 years under a black president. Now they're going to have a woman president. It was too much for them. And, and as funny as that sounds, that's true, because we have not seen the level of racism and disrespect to President Obama that and no president has experienced that while in office. So much so that they were so vocal about it. I mean, the KKK has openly supported Trump, and Trump who has refused to denounce the KKK.
And the fact that Trump was the initiator or the legitimizer, I'd say, of the birther movement.
Yeah,
the whole concept that Barack Obama wasn't born in the country,
in the United States.
And my
it took him like 5 or 6 years to even get over it.
Oh, no,
even when he saw it physically, he didn't get over it.
As my dad will tell you, because my dad is not a hardcore Trump supporter. He doesn't like Trump, but he voted for Trump. I know it was not a pleasant conversation, but he will still tell you that the full length birth certificate has still not been released, like the official one. And as also, I was talking to my dad, and he thought that Obama converted he was initially a Muslim. He was raised a Muslim and converted to Christianity. I'm like, that's not true.
Right, but and even if that was true, what is wrong with that? I've heard this before, where people, the whole birther movement thing. Oh, he was born in Kenya. Oh, we don't know where his roots are. Is he truly American? He might even be Muslim. Yeah. Hold on a second, as if being Muslim is such a bad thing. And so then not only are we demonizing but also this whole religion, fear mongering, making people fear and demonize and hate religions and people, and that's the whole thing that came out of it. this fear of the other to, protect this Americanness that's all of a sudden under attack. And so, no, I'm not surprised that Trump was elected. If I really sat down and thought about it, I'd be like, yeah, the nation has the capacity to do that. But, it was like, damn, I thought we came farther. I thought we were a little better than that. Or, I thought the powers that be would stop it. and there's still,
I don't know. I think it's pretty. I think the way that people have reacted to him winning is what terrifies me the most, because like the things that he could do. I mean, being a woman, they will impact me more, but being white, I definitely have a lot of privilege, and if anything kind of gets passed or any things get changed. But I think like what's terrifying is there's been so many attacks against like Muslim people or Mexican people or Latino people, and I think that's like what's terrifying. Or like swastikas are being drawn everywhere. There's this white nationalist group, and they call themselves the alt-right, which they're not. They're neo-Nazis, and I refuse to call them anything but neo-Nazis or white nationalists, because that's what they are. And they have like rebranded themselves, and the media is like, oh, they're dapper, they're sexy, like look at this cute Nazi family. And it's like, I guess I get it, because they want the viewers, they want the story, but it just seems so similar to what's happened in like the rise of fascism before that we've seen. It just seems kind of like we're just falling into the same trap. And I think my only kind of like goal is to just like fight it as much as possible and join any kind of resistance, because I'm not going to just sit and be witness to, because obviously being a queer woman, my rights will be affected, and just being a human being who needs healthcare and those kind of things will be affected, but more so for people who are going to be so much more affected than me. Like I can't just like sit by and let like Muslim people get attacked like next to me or something like that. So that's what's scary, is the way that it affects people. Like now he won, I can be openly racist. Now he won, I can tag a swastika on a wall and go yell at someone who's an immigrant, or I think is an immigrant, just based off what they look like. Oh, like Trump won, get the fuck out. Like when it's someone who's lived here for like 3 generations, like their family's been here for like generations, and they assume they can, yeah.
But what angers me more is that, those people have always existed. Trump has just emboldened them to be public about it. But what angers me more and what scares me more is the complacency of everyone else. Is that, people are now accepting this as the new normal. People are now saying, well, this is Trump's America. And, people who are able to say that are people speaking from privilege, because that doesn't necessarily affect them, But, going back to the saying, if you are silent in situations of injustice, you're on the side of the oppressor. So quickly have people just come to acknowledge that this is just the way it's going to be. And to refusing to call it for what it is, to call it racist, and refusing to say that it's unacceptable and that it's not, the ideals that we so claim. And, there are strings of resistance. There are people that are fighting and are trying to make sure that the progress and the work and how far we've come continues to go in the right direction and not reverse. But to me, it seems like those voices are more and more being marginalized. I mean, even though we've had this past 2 or 3 years, with the with the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement, and a lot of these movements and activists that have been empowered to call out racism, and I think a lot of that too has to do with the Obama presidency. But what I'm seeing is that those voices are quickly becoming marginalized, and replacing them is this complacency that yes, Trump's America is racist, and we paint swastikas on the wall, and we
or it's
engage in
reverse
hate
racism
crime.
if you speak out against it, or you're just as bad as a fascist if you call them out, or you say that they shouldn't be allowed to say those kind of things.
Yeah, I agree that that's 100%. My least favorite part of a Trump presidency is the fact that it sort of emboldens the Islamophobic things he says, emboldens the racist things he says, and sort of gives people who think that way like, oh, it's okay that I think that way because the president thinks that way, obviously. But one thing I do want to add, we're painting obviously a very grim picture. I want to say 2 things. One thing, first I want to say is my biggest gripe with Republicans in the last 8 years is that they never gave Obama a chance. They never gave him the
Retweet.
benefit.
Retweet.
They never gave him the benefit of the doubt. They assumed from the start that his intentions were bad. Anything he did, even if it was good, they couldn't acknowledge it because they thought in their heads that what he was doing was inherently to make America worse. He was inherently he was just trying to strip whatever. If you were a white person, he's trying to strip white people of money or rich people of their money or whatever else. Like, he just was against you from the start. And I think that really, and I think he said, Obama, in one of his recent State of the Union addresses, that's one of his biggest regrets, is that he wasn't the political disunity sort of grew under him, that there wasn't more of a coalescing, that we became more polarized. So I think that with Trump, though, I think it's important for liberal, open-minded people to sort of give him the same thing and not fall into the trap of thinking that everything he's going to do in the next 4 years, hopefully it's only 4 years, is inherently bad. I think we have to look at it objectively and look at exactly what he does. And now I want to say two quick positive things about Donald Trump and queerness. Donald Trump is the first president elected in the United States that supports same-sex marriage. When Barack Obama was elected, he did not support same-sex marriage. I think that's a testament to our society, American society, becoming more liberal, more accepting of homosexuals. Number two, if you remember, in the primaries, he was actually very much, I wouldn't say very much, but in support of trans rights. Like with the whole bathroom issue, he was asked in an interview, if Caitlyn Jenner went to the Trump Tower, what bathroom would would you allow her to use? And he said, whichever bathroom she prefers. So and then the other Republicans like Ted Cruz and the more social conservative ones attacked him, and it didn't work. And if I remember when Donald Trump won the primary, I was devastated. But the one good thing I thought about it was that it sort of, to me, was the death of social conservatism, because this guy was pro-abortion for forever until recently, where now he's pro-life. But before he was pro-abortion, he's not openly anti-gay at all. He supports same-sex marriage. He brought a flag up on stage. So I think that there are certain things that we can look at in terms of Donald Trump in queerness that could actually there's some silver lining, I think, or I find silver lining in it. And I understand others that don't and others that are scared. But I think it's important that we make sure that we give him what Obama deserved, in the sense that we don't assume that every decision he makes and everything he does is coming from a bad place. Because I don't think necessarily it is.
I do think it's interesting the way that Trump has responded to kind of more socially liberal things. But I think the fact that he changes his mind every 5 minutes is terrifying to me, because if 1 week the way his mind is going is something that goes against my identity, that's an issue. And also his running mate is even more terrifying, especially with gay, queer issues. He thinks that gay people can be electrocuted into being straight, and that sex can only be for procreation. And if you're in a marriage, a heterosexual marriage, and you can't afford a baby, you should just not have sex. You don't even get to have the right to birth control in a marriage, in a heterosexual marriage. So I think that is what's terrifying, is that his running mate is like that. And I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. But after what happened with Cheney and Bush, we can see that the vice president he's got something going on, and he can, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that is what scares me in regards to queer politics and Trump's campaign.
I don't want to be put in a position to defend Mike Pence. That's the last thing I want to do. But I want to say, though, that I think what Mike Pence needs to do is publicly denounce conversion therapy, because I honestly don't think he believes in it. I think the statement he made about supporting it was from a newsletter or a speech from 10, 20 years ago, when the conversation about gay rights was very different. Where neither Barack Obama nor Hillary Clinton supported gay marriage. I think that Mike Pence is in a tricky position, because he doesn't want his one issue to be queer issues. That's not his number one priority. He doesn't talk about it ever. Even if you remember, he did the religious freedom bill in Indiana, which said that businesses can legally discriminate against people for religious reasons. Even with that, when he was put on the spot about it, he actually changed the law. He didn't like talking about it. I don't think he's this vocal anti-queer person, but I think he doesn't want to address it because then he gets questions about it. I think he's clearly uncomfortable by homosexuality and by the whole issue, but I don't think it's as like dire as like he wants to institute conversion therapy and he's going to influence Trump to do that. I don't think it's not a number one priority for him, in my opinion.
And I would entertain, that line of thought and that kind of rationale if it wasn't for the fact that these are the people that are going to be ruling the country for the next 4 years. I mean, okay, you're uncomfortable about it, but there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations that you're going to need to have, and you have to understand that that the decisions that these people are making are not, just their personal values and personal beliefs, but are affecting a nation, and the United States being the power that it is in the world, arguably is going to have such an impact on the history and the histories to come. And so, to be honest, I haven't read up on, what Pence's idea or Trump's ideas, to be honest, about, gay rights and homosexuality and whatnot. In fact, because for the longest time, I just refused to read anything about them because I just didn't want to give my time and energy to such foolishness. Now I guess I have to start paying attention because they're actually the people in office. But, I don't want to give them the kind of benefit of the doubt thing that, oh, maybe he doesn't really believe it. And, if you look at his record, he gets, he kind of pedals back on it a little bit. But at the end of the day, he is the one making the decisions, and, these actions and the decisions that he makes are going to affect, the people today that live in this country, that live in the United States, and then are going to affect the history from there on out. Because, we say, oh, this next 4 years, are we going to get it through it? Is it going to be bad, et cetera, et cetera? But it's not just the next 4 years. It's the laws and the policies and the legacy that's going to be left behind, which is a taste in our mouths that is going to be there for a long time.
Yeah. I think Mike Pence, I think it's reprehensible for anyone to not openly support queer people. And I think a lot of the Republican Party doesn't, and they're uncomfortable with it, even though gay marriage has passed and we've legalized in the United States now. I think a lot of people still, it's like a queasy issue for them, and I think that's awful. I think it sucks. But I do think that, like, I really just don't think that it benefits the dialogue to make claims about people's opinions that aren't necessarily true. And I think a lot of that happened with President Obama, and I just think that we should try to make the dialogue more about what their policies are going to be. And I think, to be honest, I don't think Trump's policy is very queer people focused. For better or for worse, I don't think it's something he particularly cares about. I don't think it's something Mike Pence particularly cares about. I don't think we're going to see him talk about it, really. I mean,
but there's so much that needs to be, because gay marriage is like to me, not kind of being it's on the back burner isn't good enough.
No, I wish
I think not be working with the system we have, but changing the system. I think that's more of what is important to me. Well, maybe he won't do this, maybe he'll do this, maybe his policies or whatever. But to me, we have to be changing the system. We have to be.
Do you think that's possible?
I mean,
I don't know. Anthony, that's the problem.
Anthony, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't want to go into, fly back to the States and think that the next 4 years are going to be living hell. I would I'm in my 20s. I want to be able to, get out there and live freely and, live my own truth, etc. But, please, and to anyone who listens to it, don't disillusion yourself and like the people who voted for him and pretend that, that things aren't going to happen that are going to be harmful for queer people and are going to be harmful for people of color and for immigrants and for poor people. Don't think that, that's not possible. We don't need to disillusion ourselves, and we don't need to normalize the actual hate that is being peddled. And it's dangerous, and there's severe consequences.
And also with the queer thing is that a lot of, even if it's not directly impacting queer people or targeted towards queer people, if there's something that kind of affects housing or affects money or affects how much, like minimum wage or jobs or those kind of things.
It affects queer people first.
Trans people of color, trans Black women are they are much more likely to be prone to violence. They can't get housing because people don't trust that they are the gender that they are. They can't get jobs because of the same reason. And so if they are going to be affected first, or they are going to be affected more so than other people. And so I think intersectionality is really important to keep in mind, even if I do agree what you guys are saying about we can't just be like, I disagree with this person, I hate them, we can't even look at him. But we do need to recognize the way that intersectionality goes into policy, because it's not like, oh, well, this gets passed and only affects one person or only affects one group of people. There's people that are in different groups, and they can be affected in different ways because of, like, money can affect a lot of different things, or like jobs, housing, those kind of things, have healthcare, have really big kind of effects in like a broader scheme, or with like hormones and stuff, of if birth control and those kind of things are going to be, I don't know what's going to happen, but if there's more regulation or it's harder to get them, that affects trans women, that affects trans men, that affects women, that affects, so it's, I think it's important to think about,
of course,
like what you were saying about the ways that it goes past government, because like we were talking about of like attacks and violence and stuff, like if it just kind of gives people the freedom and the strength to act out in ways, and that has power, and I think that can even have more power than in some cases than like the politicians do. Of if you are going to get beat up walking down the street, you don't care about some random bill that's getting passed. You care about the fact that you're going to get beat up and someone's going to or could try to kill you. So,
and I mean, on the other end of the coin, I mean, look at what Obama has done for so many people, regardless of his policy. You know, I remember for the community of color, for the Black community, to have a Black president. And so, and what he did, he encouraged so many people. He encouraged me. I mean, to be honest, my whole conscious being, I was 12 when he was elected. My whole coming of age was under a Black presidency. And that was absolutely beautiful. That was inspiring for a young Black boy, and for many, young Black people and people of color throughout, the country and even beyond. And so just to have that figure, actually, I remember people, there was this one conversation that I was actually just irritated, so I didn't engage in it, but I was, I overheard it. And this guy said, well, what has Obama done for me? And this is a Black guy. What has Obama done for me? Yeah, I voted for him, but, I ain't feel nothing about it. And, this woman says, well, your son is growing up knowing that he can be president, and he has someone to look up to. Who does he look up to? He looks up to the president. He knows that that's an attainable thing. And, regardless of, you can't even quantify that. You can quantify healthcare. You can quantify, the unemployment rate or the GDP and, all these different measures that we've used to, assess Obama's success as a president. But, what can't be quantified and what is absolutely so powerful is the fact that he's been a role model and such an incredible figure to a whole generation of people and beyond, and has been, for many people, the culmination of generations of struggle. When my grandmother, who's 80-some years old, gets on a plane and goes to D.C. to see the first Black president inaugurated, it's not just because she got an extra few $100s in her pocket. It's because something amazing is happening. And, and understanding that and coming from that, now we have the opposite end of the coin that, that's, we have to, the greatness that, Obama was, we can't disillusion ourselves and think that, we're just going to ride out these little 4 years. We have to be aware.
And what do you guys think the US government could do to benefit queer rights?
Not just accept that gay marriage is what gay people want, or like the only thing that we want.
Yeah, and to think that's the end all be all.
I think national anti-discrimination laws, and actually, yes. I think that we need to amend the 1965 Civil Rights Act and add sexual orientation as a category that's protected from discrimination by private businesses. For me, on that whole like wedding cake issue, I just think that in 1965, like, we decided as a country that if you're a business that's open to the public, you can't discriminate against someone. And I think whether that's race, religion, sex, I think sexual orientation should be added to that list. And I think that would put a lot of those issues to rest. And I understand at that time gay rights weren't a thing that people really openly discussed in the mainstream politics. But I think sexual orientation should be added to the 1965 Civil Rights Act. Laws in general. I think that's important.
I think we need to talk about gender and transgender individuals or gender nonconforming people, but more so transgender just for the health care side of it. I think that they need to have much more access to safe and easy and I would say free, but that doesn't seem like something that's going to be happening anytime soon, but at least like low cost hormones and medical treatment and being able to go to a doctor that doesn't disbelieve them. And I think that's like something that we kind of like the way I have seen it a lot is kind of like when people think about like gay rights, it's like this commercialized, like marketed, like cute, like white gay couple and their like son that they adopted from Africa or something. And they're like beautiful and yeah, they're like beautiful and like this perfect like gay couple and maybe like one lesbian couple or something. And there's no kind of variation in the way that both gender and sexuality kind of arise. And I think at the very least we need to like acknowledge it more and talk about it more. And I think anti-discrimination laws for sure, access to healthcare needs to be broader. The bathroom thing, we should not even be fucking arguing about that. And I think there should be gender neutral bathrooms everywhere. But if we're not going to do that, at least let people use the bathroom that they feel like they want to use. And I think things like that are at the very least like can make a statement of like we're not going to just like accept this. And there's still places where you can get fired for being gay. And so yeah, we need to like definitely, it needs to be a talking point, and it needs to be a talking point past just like rich gay guys. And it definitely, gender, I think, is something we really need to be talking about.
Yeah, I think, the country has got to the point where, we legalize gay marriage and that, gay marriage is a thing, that was the end all be all, and that, we've achieved it. And, just as everything that's been said, it's not there yet. I know there are people in the queer community that are still hurting, that are still disadvantaged, that are still vulnerable. And that vulnerability can be exploited very easily. And as we've already said, they're some of the first people to feel unemployment and to feel, cuts in healthcare and cuts in spending and et cetera. They're the first people out on the streets. They're the first people, in the homeless shelters. And, we need to acknowledge that. And sometimes, people say that and we'll be like, well, those aren't queer issues. Well, yes, they're queer issues because all issues are queer issues because of intersectionality, because, you're not just affected by one axis of oppression. And, until, that's understood, and even before it's understood, until, we acknowledge that and do something about it, we still have a lot of work to go, a lot of work to be done.
What do you expect from the LGBTQI community now? What do you, how do you see the future of that?
Actually, I think in terms of the community, I'm actually very excited about what is to come. And, we briefly touched on this earlier, but, within the last, 3-4 years, we've seen like this rise in like Black Lives Matter and, with that other activist movements. And I would say those movements are very much intersectional. If you look at the founders, quote unquote, of Black Lives Matter, they're all queer women of color. And I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but, it seems like queer women of color are some powerful people.
And have been forever.
And will continue to be. Shout out to our queer women of color. And so, whenever I think about activism on campus, there are these key figures that I think of. And they're fighting so many fronts. They're fighting sexism because they're a woman or female bodied. And they're fighting racism because they're of color. And then they're fighting homophobia because they're queer. And, so it's never just one fight that you're fighting. And so if you pay attention, and if you not even look hard enough, but if you just pay attention, we're in this point where there's certain areas of our society that are advancing and pushing for our rights, and maybe this is a high note that we can, out of all this darkness that we can come out. But one thing that I've been very interested in is like representations of queer and people of color in the media, and the fact that we have these people like Viola Davis, and we have these people like Laverne Cox, and people living their truth and out there and being who they are, and showing and representing their identities is very, very important. These people in the media that are calling out racism and sexism, xenophobia, and homophobia when it's there, and Janet Mock and all these people. And now I'm ranting a little bit, but I think in general, to kind of sum it up, is that the LGBT community, the queer community, the community of color, there's definitely this cohesion and this group effort and this working together and this understanding of intersectional identities and this understanding that, system of oppressions don't just affect, those under that label, but affect all of us. Sexism affects men just as much as women, and it disadvantages our whole society. And that can be said for any axis of oppression. And so, the fact that that language and that, ideas are out there and people are understanding that, I think is just such a beautiful thing. The fact that Black Lives Matter is with the queer movement, and the queer movement is enabling, the feminist movement, and all these people are in conversation with one another. And then you add the media on top of that. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think, I hope that is something that is continues these next 4 years. We'll see. Time will tell. But, if anything, we have a beautiful momentum to build off of.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the representation, how important that is, and how just like there's a show called Steven Universe it's like one of the gayest shows I've ever watched. It's so good. It's very like all the characters are female identifying, and there's a lot of lesbian relationships, and it's not like hinted at. It's like, and it's a children's show. And so I think it's pretty great that children are growing up with at least like seeing queer people, and it's not like the only thing about them is queer. It's like they're just queer and they're kicking ass.
Their lives,
yeah, they're kicking ass. They're like saving the world and doing like, and it's about like love and like respect and consent. And I think that that's such a good representation, and it's at such a like for children too, which I think is even more important.
What's the show called?
Steven Universe.
Steven Universe.
And also I think it's really interesting, and just kind of things that I've seen and things that have gotten more attention. I think they've always been around, but they've started to get more attention of like, for me, I mean, I'm talking about gender a lot, but I think it's so interesting how both sexuality and gender are like a spectrum. And we were talking about earlier of like I was straight in high school, or I've been kind of straight and I've been kind of gay, and sometimes I'm really gay and 2 days later I'm really straight, and kind of depends on the day of the week, depends on the year, depends on.
I'm always pretty gay.
Yeah. There's always that gayness, but especially being someone who's, I don't use the term bisexual, I don't like it, but that I am in a relationship with a man, I date women, I kind of do both. Sometimes I'm only doing one, sometimes I'm only doing the other. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that, and I think it's really cool that in at least queer people I know I know a lot of people that are gender nonconforming and that are like, well, yeah, I'm kind of queerish, I'm gay, I don't know. Like, I think what's a lot better to be that the future is not just you're gay, straight, or bisexual, or you're a man or you're a woman or you're a transgender man or a woman. There's so much more in between, and I think that is the future of the queer community, of recognizing that and accepting that and being like, well, I do not associate myself with any kind of masculinity, but I define my femininity in a way that may incorporate things that we see as masculine. So maybe the way I dress could be, some people might say it's androgynous or something, but to me, that's how I represent my femininity. It's just maybe someone else could see it in a different way. And I think we need to really challenge sexualities and genders that we were taught as like are binaries and that are stagnant and that are like fixed. And we need to really kind of question how our identities and kind of let there be more fluidity, I think. Yeah.
I think Desmond and Laura covered the queer community very well. So I'm going to go take another stab at the question before, because I thought of another policy that I think is super important, and I think that the Netherlands is awesome on, which is education. Because I think just sex education in the Netherlands in general is just so much more open and positive and not meant to scare people. And I think it just leads to such a more positive conversation about sex in general, but also about queerness. Because I remember in high school, I was never taught about what homosexuality was. It was the only time I remember it being brought up in the context of like a health class was with AIDS. Like, oh, AIDS was this awful thing. If you have unprotected sex, you might get AIDS. And by the way, it killed a lot of gay people in 1980s, a lot of gay men in the 1980s. Like that was what I learned about gayness in school. And I think it's important that children are taught from a super duper young age, like about sexuality and about gender and about all these things. And it's unfortunate because all of the politicians that would be against that are the ones that need that course themselves. They need everyone against the gender unicorn or the whatever, all that literature, they should be the ones reading it because they don't understand it themselves, and it's sad. But I think education is such a big deal. I don't think it's going to happen at a national level in the near future, but I think at the local level, like that's something definitely I'm going to look into when I go back in DC, because like the COC here, I know they have representatives go to schools and openly discuss queerness, gayness, their identities with students in various levels of education, and I think that's incredible.
I remember having that class.
Yeah.
I remember now. Yeah. So, I know a lot of you are going back very soon, and we're all sad. But how do you look back here on your time in Amsterdam?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. I wish, one thing I keep thinking is that I wish I had more time here. You know, I only have a couple days left, and I'll be spending it writing papers and doing exams, which is unfortunate. But yeah, like my time here has been great. I mean, you know, I've already started to say some tearful goodbyes. You know, people have already, you know, headed back to the States, or, you know, last meetings with people, because I know I'm going to be booked up in the library for the next couple of days. That, you know, let me just say my goodbyes now. And I've realized I've made great friends, and you know, I'm appreciative for Amsterdam for providing a space for me to do that, because you know, there's a lot of spaces out there, there's a lot of places and countries that, you know, I would go in this, I would not have the same experience, and you know, I'm just blessed and thankful that I ended up here, and whatever twist of fate landed me on Jan van Galenstraat, where I live.
One thing real quick just to add is, I think maybe one memory that I think will be like really important is biking home drunk. And you're like alone, and there's no cars out, and like just like it's quiet, it's like 2 in the morning, and you're biking home drunk, and like it's cold but you're hot because you've been biking, and just kind of like it's kind of like a very serene, like kind of like a meditative kind of thing. You're like I just had a good night, I get to go home and be alone in my room and like chill the fuck out, like go to bed or like watch TV and just kind of like be lazy. And that kind of like, I think that's a really nice place to be, especially when you have to cross this bridge and it's like very beautiful, and I kind of just like chill. Like it's like I'm like stressing biking like stuff, and then I'm like, okay, like I live in Amsterdam, like I'm drunk biking home at 2 in, like I could not do this anywhere else. So like that's I think there's no cars out, there's no, you don't have to worry.
It's also nice after a bad night if you're crying, just like seeing
been there.
like seeing all the beautiful things, and there's no one really around, and you're just biking. It's really, like you said, meditative and fun, whether you're happy or really sad. Yeah I'm really sad that I'm leaving. It's bittersweet because obviously I miss people back home, but I loved my time here. I think most of my memories are going to be associated with the people I've met who have been just awesome, both American friends and friends in ASVG. Just like those are probably what I'm going to remember the most. And it was, like you guys said, it was just so cool just like living in Europe for like 4 months. And then like for me, I never before coming here considered living in anywhere other than the United States. My parents are just got to the U.S. Like it was just wasn't a conception in my mind that I could maybe want to live somewhere else. And now coming here and just seeing how I like it and how I seem to fit and how everything feels right sort of made me question things. And I think it's broadened my perspectives on so many issues and so many topics. The classes I've took have been pretty good too. I mean, it's just overall been really nice. I wish I had some more time. Yeah. But alas, all good things come to an end at some point. But I hope I'm back at some point in some way for sure. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming. And it was our first time in ASVG as well, and we've made friends, international friends, a lot of international friends, and you have broadened our horizon as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Aw.